Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lori Tellerico. I'm one of the librarians here at San Francisco Public Library, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us for a discussion of the intersection of art and AI. To begin, I'd like to share our land acknowledgement. The San Francisco Public Library acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. As uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone. This event is part of our One City, One Book, San Francisco's annual citywide reading event, now in its 20th year. Our selection this year is The Worlds I See by Dr. Fei-Fei Li, a memoir that invites us to reflect on the human values that must guide technological innovation. Her story reminds us that AI should be built with empathy, inclusion, and care, ideas that resonate with today's conversation. This afternoon, we're looking at Art Meets AI, how artists are using artificial intelligence to create, to question, and to push boundaries of what art can be. You'll hear from 4 artists who work in very different ways. After their talks, we'll bring everyone together for a panel conversation, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. Our first speaker today is Audrey Kim. Audrey is the founder of the Misalignment AI Museum, a nonprofit cultural institution that uses art to spark public understanding, curiosity, and conversation about artificial intelligence. Through playful and thought-provoking installations, the museum encourages people to explore how AI is shaping our lives and the future. The museum has also been named one of the top things to do in San Francisco. Please join me in welcoming Audrey Kim.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everyone. Okay. Hi, my name's Audrey Kim, and as Lori introduced, I'm the founder of the Misalignment AI Museum. So the museum originally started in 2023 as just an 8-week pop-up to be a space primarily to help increase literacy about AI through fun art exhibits, and then also to really encourage open discourse on these topics. And so as Lori mentioned, it's been kind of a wild ride. Pretty much immediately, we went really viral, and we ended up on like every news publication. We became number 6 on TripAdvisor in the museum category. We were the reason we decided to continue it beyond just the 8-week pop-up was because through the reception, I was recognizing how important it was to really fulfill this need, and there was so much desire across like tech and non-tech spectrums to really understand this artificial intelligence technology. So we've done a bunch of pop-ups, we've done a bunch of tours. I just want to share one story that was like the kicker for me that made me decide to really invest in trying to make this a more permanent thing, which was we pretty much have had like everybody come through the museum, like from like prime ministers of foreign countries to like the founders of Google and OpenAI. But then the thing that really moved me was one, I had a week where we were in the SF Chronicle, I believe, and so I had a bunch of retirees come with their newspaper clippings, and this was something that like it's an audience that really wants to learn about this, but there isn't a lot accessible if you're not already very tech savvy. And then in addition to that, we had one day where it was a grandfather, father, and son of farmers who had driven up from like the Central Valley because they had seen about the museum in the news, and they said that they knew this was a technology that was going to change the world and impact their lives, but they didn't know where to start learning about it. So this really moved me because I realized we in the Bay Area live very much in a bubble where we assume that the whole world understands technology or the things that we understand at the same baseline, which is so advanced from the rest of the world. So we were really blessed to get a very big reception, and I saw that as actually a very big responsibility, and honored to be able to meet some of that. So this was our previous location. We were at the Chase Center in the Dog Patch, and it was such a fun location. This is our second location. Our first one was in the Mission, and then, so we're not here anymore, which I'll share more about our plans later, but we were always open to the public. However, we would charge for private tours and events, but we would always do school tours for free. And to give some insight, that exhibit there with the rotary payphone, it's like a 1970s payphone that we refurbished, but we retrofit it with a simulation of Fred Rogers. And so if you come to the museum, you can pick up that phone and you can have a conversation with somebody that sounds like Fred Rogers, but it's in fact 3 different AIs that we threaded together to, one, train on the style of voice of this person and also the personality, and then it had another piece of the technology that could interpret when you were having a conversation with it. And so for an exhibit like this, my goal is to be a really approachable way for people to experience AI. And so when you're having this conversation, it just feels very normal, but then you read the placard and then you leave not just having this nebulous understanding of oh, there is AI, but actually there's in fact 3 different types of AI that made this conversation seem seamless. And so it's through things like this that I was hoping we could help increase both literacy and conversations. The marionette puppet in the middle is a little bit of a creepier exhibit where you read that poem and it takes about 7 seconds to finish reading that poem, but by the time you finish, it's already cloned your voice, and I have a speaker hidden behind it, and it tells you help, I've been cloned, that imposter's pretending to be me. So for this exhibit, we were trying to demonstrate how quickly and believable it is to create clones of people. And so for me, I saw that as a visceral way to have people understand if they get a scam call that to be a bit more aware, which I know that's been happening a lot too, where people are getting phone calls from what they think is their family members and it turns out to be AI. So something that's been really cool too is beyond just our niche tech world, we've gotten some recognition from the traditional art world, and one of our pieces was recently sold at Christie's, and it was on display in Rockefeller in New York, which was such a wild surprise. And it was their first AI art auction. We've also done pop-ups for TEDTalks in Vancouver. We did this Future House biotech pop-up, which was at the Four Seasons in Napa, which was also really interesting and cool. We were invited to give a talk and also have exhibits at the American Alliance of Museums in 2024. Also at Greece Cathedral, which was really delightful. It's the church I go to. So just to give some background about what the future of the museum is, largely what I am hoping to do for the museum is not just to create the exhibits, but actually create the next evolution of the museum. So since the world's evolving with AI, I think we also need to evolve the mechanisms to be able to learn and archive these things. So to give a brief history, prior to the 1700s, museums pretty much didn't exist. They were cabinets of curiosities where wealthy individuals would collect things and then kind of show their friend, look at this human head or something. But then it was only in the 1700s that the Louvre and the British Museum were the first instance where this was given for the public good. And then it was in the 1800s that things like the Smithsonian, the National Gallery, those were another evolution of the museum where there became a professionalization of it. So then there was more care about the provenance or the preservation of these pieces. And then if you switch now to the 1900s, that was when the MoMA, the Explorer was kind of the cusp, but then there was an evolution where museums now not only were about preservation and archiving of history, but they were now being focused more on education and culture. So that's where you see the Getty or the Exploratorium or the MoMA. And so what I'm seeing now is that this evolution happened over 3 centuries, but the needs that are coming with AI is such a compression of time that we need really something that is evolved to serve this era that can do both the preservation, the education, and also the curation of this technology and topics. So why do we need a new type of museum? So one, I'm sure if any of you guys have worked in art, the industry moves very slowly. Like to have an exhibit that gets planned and then gets on display within like 2 or 3 years is considered very fast. And I think that that makes a lot of sense for a lot of the planning and the things that are involved, but especially if you're trying to cover a topic like AI that is moving so rapidly. If you wait 2 years to do an exhibit, that's like eons in the AI world. And so then the things that you're able to display are so outdated at that point. And so we really want to keep up. Our goal for the museum is to essentially create new pieces every quarter. And that way we're able to both like track with the new advancements and be a means for people to accessibly learn about it. So going into that then is AI literacy. Since there's a big schism of like tech native and non-tech native, I think there's like a bigger need to really bridge this gap. And so interestingly, it seems like through a medium like art, it really kind of creates I always like to think of really good Pixar movies where you can watch the same movie and it can appeal to a kid, but it can also appeal to the adult. And so in the same way, I'm really hoping that our exhibits, that through the fun interactive elements of it, you are able to meet the people, even if you don't know anything about tech, to still find, for example, that conversation with Fred Rogers fun. But then if you are very technical, through the medium of art, it kind of creates a refraction of these very charged and controversial topics. So it gives you a new means to really talk about these things that aren't so emotionally charged, I would say. And then the other piece is the need for time capsuling and preservation. So one of our pieces that we made in 2023 was using OpenAI's OpenAI's GPT-3. And so it's a cloud-based service, which means that we were paying monthly to be able to use this service, and that's how we were accessing this type of AI. But then in 2024, the company had deprecated that type of their AI, and so we just lost this piece. And so it was a really good learning experience for me where I realized with this current form where there's a large dependence on cloud-based services, it's great because it makes things very accessible and affordable in certain ways, but it also makes you very vulnerable to not controlling and losing things because you're very beholden to what these larger companies are able to offer you. So something that we're very big on doing is trying to localize our pieces, which means that we're taking probably not like as powerful as like Grok or like Google or OpenAI are able to give, but we're able to create little microcosms of the AI technology at this time and house it entirely in our own computers and hardware. So in the same way, then we get multiple chargers and multiple other things, because I'm sure you guys probably have old phones that have a lot of photos in it, but you don't have the charger anymore and you can't buy them anymore, so they're just locked away. So there's a lot of other components when it comes to AI that in order to preserve and still maintain accessibility, there's both the hardware and the software components. And then, of course, then the other side is, in the stage that we are right now, I think I liken a lot of AI to how maybe in the early days of electricity, everybody's oh, this is an electric light bulb, or this is an electric toaster. We are definitely going to get to a point where right now, even though we're saying it's AI-powered something, AI is going to be so permeated in everything that we're just not going to say AI X anymore. It's just going to be this is just how the thing is. And so we are at a very beginning stage, which I think is very exciting. It also has a lot of big questions that need to be addressed. But I think that it will certainly open up a really cool world possibility of what can this new medium and this technology really enable? And another metaphor I always think about is photography, how we see photography as a genre of art now. But when you look through the history of it, pretty much you used to have to like sit and pose for like 30 minutes to an hour. And so because the technology didn't enable more candid photos, we didn't have like the Richard Avedon or like a lot of the really amazing photography we see today. And that new genre of art was predicated on like the technology of the shutter and the flash. And so I think that we're definitely going to see like a renaissance of a new type of art that this technology is going to enable. And so, yeah, that's basically, this is kind of what I said in a longer way, so we can, so pretty much the vision for the museum is not just right now to be like a fun and approachable way for people to learn about AI, but to really see this at the larger scale about creating this new evolution of the museum that is tracking in line with the new needs with AI. So yeah, thank you. I hope I left it over.
Thank you, Audrey. Our next speaker is Quinn Keck. Quinn is a multidisciplinary artist and data scientist who blends code, printmaking, installation, and writing to explore the human experience. They use their background in data science and creative coding to examine memory, perception, identity, and the ethical dimensions of AI. Rather than depicting the physical world as we see it, Quinn's work abstracts layers of experience, inviting us to think about how we form patterns, how we remember, and how we make meaning in a world full of chaos. Please welcome Quinn Keck.
Okay, so welcome. Hi, everyone. As Lori said, my name's Quinn, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and I will work to investigate concepts in math, physics, technology, and philosophy. I always kind of feel like the concept and idea of my projects often come first, and then the medium comes second. So lately, I've been working across printmaking, artist books, creative coding, and installation. And I really like to think that I'm building new worlds in both kind of digital and physical spaces to kind of go beyond the axioms that define what is rational, logical, and default. In addition to like my art practice, I've always worked other jobs, and I think that these like inform my practice and broaden the perspectives I can bring in. And I found, kind of moments and contradictions, both so frustrating in either like the nonprofit industrial complex or in corporate data science, that clearly the only course of action was to make art projects about the contradictions I witnessed. So I'm going to go in and talk a little bit about that. But before I do, I think I need to clear up some definitions. There's a lot of hype around artificial intelligence and a lot of sound bites and a lot of different definitions. So I want to establish that artificial intelligence is not alive. I mean, like this meme is really cute and I find it funny, but the notion that like any model we have current out there is like conscious is like, yes, it passes the Turing test in that like it can mimic a human response and maybe trick a human, but ultimately these models are all giving the most probable answer. Like they can't even do basic math unless a calculator function is like built into them and they're told to look for like certain words. And yeah, like, I mean, it's a narrative that allows, maybe some like corporate entities or other actors to perhaps like escape responsibility for what these outputs are doing, but, very kind of far from the truth. They're also definitely not unbiased and definitely not neutral. I'll go into it a bit with that as well, but like, the idea that technology is neutral or isn't built in a context is, kind of absurd and definitely not what's the case right now. They're also not new, which probably gives some like eye rolls or shocks. I have a brief AI history slide next. And they're also definitely not like our savior or going to be able to solve all the problems they're causing with the environment on their own or anything like that. Though Tech Won't Save Us is a great podcast, and I highly recommend them. But yeah. So as promised, a brief history of AI. And the point of this slide is not that you know what a naive Babes is or a support vector machine or a ReLU or anything like that. But I think like the main takeaway is that the algorithms and ideas and concepts that are like fueling everything we're using today, most of this was made far before 2009. And what has changed in the last like recent years is just the size of computing power, and that we're having models trained on GPUs with trainings that cost like $100 million and use tons of energy and are not like just like kind of existing in a cloud up there, but really do have a real impact on people, both through their like kind of the way they physically exist in the world and the kind of bias and they encode. So I'll go a little bit into that. So there's more environmental impacts than I could possibly talk about in a 10-minute slide when it comes to artificial intelligence, but the one I wanted to highlight was just water use. Data centers use a huge amount of water to cool their servers, and no one has really developed an alternative because it's cheap to use water, and we live in capitalism, so it's about profits above all else. And data centers are often built in communities that are already experiencing droughts. It's already kind of just it's furthering the impacts of climate change, on the most marginalized and disenfranchised communities among us who might not have are raising their voices against this, but definitely don't have the kind of platforms an AI or a tech company has. So these are screenshots from a Guardian article. I encourage you to read the whole article. I feel like this is always kind of an open secret. It's definitely out there, but not necessarily the thing that's making the headlines of the news. And then this is a quote from the Crees Center study. So there's over 5,000 data centers just in the United States alone, and North Virginia is kind of the epicenter of all that, and they're already experiencing pretty serious environmental impacts, and understandably local residents are protesting and don't want data centers impacting that. So I think it's just important to understand the context of where it's coming from. It's not just some nice neutral entity you're talking to, as much as that would be pleasant to think about. And then I wanted to next highlight just 2 examples out of many about how bias is encoded in the way these algorithms are used in our day-to-day lives. So one famous one is the compass recidivism algorithm. This is an algorithm that is supposed to predict accurately the likelihood of a defendant to commit another crime if it were released, and was published, bought by several states, and instituted in the judiciary system, so that when judges were sentencing people, they'd be given a score, saying how likely this person was to commit a crime again. And like most people, if it's science, you're seeing this as kind of neutral, scientific, it's supposed to decrease bias, but in fact, increased bias by, because any algorithm is always trained on data, and so, any sentencing data that was available would be biased, and so thus, even without race as a direct input, this algorithm would produce biased results, and the tech industry often has a build fast and break things axiom when it comes to things, but you really can't build fast and break things when these are impacting real people's ability to walk in the world and stuff, and impacting the environment at this scale. Another kind of maybe famous example, or at least one that came out, was the 2019 Amazon recommendation engine. They were, lots of people apply to Amazon. They want to make an AI to weed through their resumes, and it would penalize resumes that had the word woman and other words in it because, using Amazon's training data, white cis men were often more hired. And so they ended up not being able to use this after the public outcry, but it's just, depending on who's in the room, what's going on, who's even thinking through what we should test, things like this happen all the time. And there's numerous other examples, and if you want to learn more, I highly recommend Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill, who's a mathematician who does work on this. I did a very quick, easy, shorter version of kind of just showing how bias is encoded. So word vectors or word embeddings are often used in natural language processing. So I did a quick experiment. We're using the groups of names from someone else's paper. I just made a bunch of kind of generic entry-level software engineer resumes where everything was the same except for the name on top, and then created a document centroid, which is a common NLP technique to kind of get context in a vector form and in a vector space, and then compared that to the document centroid for a Google job posting on computer software engineer, and lo and behold, despite the only difference really just being the name, white male European names were considered a lot closer in vector space and thus more similar to the job posting, even though there's literally nothing different, word for word, on what these resumes say, each of these made-up people's experiences. So I think this is a very known thing. There's lots of papers out there, lipstick on a pig and stuff, but there's not really the incentive to force corporations or big actors to actually have to fix anything about this. So this kind of continues and probably will. And one artist who I wanted to like highlight who does work on this is Martinine Sims. And I just think this like quote really like sums it all really well. Just basically neural nets learn the rules of whatever data they're given. So any glitch or failure within the networks themselves, it does not point to a point of failure they are, but really the institutions and systems. And then next, I'm going to talk about just a project I did related about this. So I did a project called Derivations, where I interviewed other artists in the Gray Area Cultural Incubator Program. And they were all artists who use code in their work. Some of them do use generative AI, some of them don't. Just about their thoughts about, AI, how it's affecting art and where things are going. This was really like the height of the Midjourney scandal with the Sarah Anderson lawsuit, and that kind of thing. And I thought it was important to highlight not just make it seem like the narrative is like, oh, traditional painters are upset by AI, but it's totally great otherwise, and that there really is like a range of voices. And then for the art piece itself, the visuals, I have like kind of an abstract image database I made where I had not a generative AI, like a ResNet, which is like an image classification model, and one that's trained to just, like if you're the most generic, like this is a picture of a cat, it says it's a cat kind of model, label my abstract art. So I had used those labels to like connect those images to what people were saying, and it was really intentional to not be using generative AI for this. Like I wanted to point out like kind of like the limits and sometimes absurdity of like computer vision and where that goes. So next I'm going to play a short clip from that, and the artist speaking's name's Arden. Yes. One more click? Okay.
You can see like the worst case where, these tools kind of accelerate people who already have advantages at the expense of people who are disadvantaged, and that would be like the worst case scenario, because that would basically lead to some kind of like AI oligarchy situation. I do envision that these tools will become more powerful and they're not going to go away, and so like I feel like we do have to learn to work with them at this point. And if we can learn to work with them in a way that doesn't necessarily benefit these like profiteers, that would be best. Like even if that involves like piracy or something, I'm not like above something like that.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, you can read all the clips on my website, and it's a range. Like, it's not all people saying AI is terrible. Like, some of them really do use it in their practice. I think it's important to, like, have a wider conversation, and there's many ways in which, like, making art about something is a way to cover up, like, darker truths about, like, what's really going on. And I think it's important to not, like, art wash the narratives around artificial intelligence. And then next, I just kind of wanted to run through a few examples of my other work and just, mostly just that I want to point out that, like, for Echoes of Form, I am using, like, Python and, and code to make this, but there's, like, ways of creating, like, interesting visual art that isn't, like, reliant on big, large, neural networks to generate the outputs. This is all photographs that either people submitted of their memories of Richmond or I got from the Richmond archive. And then I created kind of like this quilt-like pattern and combined different like collages of the memories with like various levels of kind of glitch in them. And it's all just kind of, like regular Python code, and then had visuals playing in a loop. And then even my work that's like more, like traditional, So like this is a monotype and then this is an artist book. Like I enjoy like using technology and concepts in science. Like this print has like the shape of like a GABA molecule involved and stuff, but I think that like I see it more as like it's a way to like augment the process, or just like for the artist book on the left really made sense if I'm gonna make a project about like how so much of San Francisco is built on top of its cemeteries. Like I really did want like the ghostly effect of a bunch of clear laser engravings. And then these are some examples of ones that like more deal directly with like, scientific concepts. I'll have even like just go as far as to have equations in my work. But what I'm really interested in is investigating like the narrative behind it. And, like a lot of times when you hear the canon science narrative, it's a bunch of mostly white men who like independently made this discovery, supposedly, and it really covers up the complex like, cultures, thoughts, groups of people that really like brought science forward, and also all the things we got wrong and how quickly it all changes and that. And I think it's really important to kind of investigate these narratives since they really do shape our world. And then finally, I wanted to bring up another artist who I feel like really offers a powerful alternative to like kind of stable diffusion. So Helen Tinsing talks a lot about the handmade web, which is an idea coined by J.R. Carpenter, and its website's coded by hand and kind of maintained by a single person. There often are like size limitations and all kinds of things, but you can still create like really beautiful, powerful art. And I think in a lot of ways, the limits, or even having to have like your own server and maintain that, like really do inform the work, and we don't have to solely rely on large, generative models to create really amazing pieces. So I encourage you, her website's at the bottom. Please check out her work. And then finally, at the end of all my talks, I like to offer tech acknowledgement. It doesn't make like my talk okay or anything like that, but as an artist who uses technology, I think it's important to kind of name these things and think about it. So it's up there. And then I forgot my works cited slide, but if you want to go to bit.ly/QK_works_cited 2025-1102, it's there. Or if you just want to like email me or DM me on Instagram, I'm happy to send it to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Quinn. Our next speaker is Ash Her, known online as Empowa. Ash is an artist whose work explores personal growth through the constantly shifting landscapes of the internet. She is the founder of TEDTalks, a nonprofit arts organization that creates intersections between art and technology here in San Francisco. Ash also runs Creative Futures Counterstructures, an artist residency developed in partnership with the Mozilla Foundation, which supports artists who are imagining and challenging the futures of AI. Please welcome Ash Her.
Thank you so much, Lori. I am so grateful to be here. Thank you again for having me. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ash. I go by Empowa online. I'm an artist that likes to use emergent technologies in my artworks. I think this is a good canvas to explore like the nuances of emergent technologies. Clicker. This. Oh, cool. So the focus of this is AI. So here are some AI adjacent things that I've made recently. I think earlier on, it was pretty apparent to me that AI would be most immediately useful for coding more apps and regulating emotions in humans. And so a lot of my initial explorations with AI were around this concept. Not that, but this is a piece I made called Vent, and it's an ASCII art vent that basically you vent to, and then you get a AI-assisted interpretation of what you're going through and suggestions for ways to move forward. Just one piece, and then I made this. musicismytherapist.com, a similar vein of using AI as emotional regulating. Basically, it's a therapist chair that you can vent your problems to, and I have an AI give you a song recommendation based on your problems. At the time, I was like, oh yeah, music is really healing, and whenever I'm going through something, I usually listen to a song to help me move through it, and so this felt like another parallel in using AI to help regulate my emotions, which I think is an interesting topic too, like using a machine to regulate something so human. And then, yeah, I guess like vibe coding over the past year and last year has become a thing where you're basically using just natural language to code. And so you don't really need to know how to code anymore. You can just use your imagination and make things come to life. So this is a website that I vibe coded, so AI is coding for me. And right now on the internet, like the popular thing is to use your hands as interfaces for websites. And yeah, so basically this is called pinch pump. You use one hand to pinch and zoom an image and the other hand to pump and, wait, I said that wrong. One hand makes the image go bigger, one hand makes the image go smaller. It's just like a fun interactive installation. Yeah, I guess AI is a controversial medium to work with right now, but I do think it is the artist's responsibility to explore like the different nuances and like tell people about their findings. Like I think there's so many scary things about AI, and artists should be using this as a medium to work with to share perspectives that can help make AI better for all of us. Okay, so in addition to my art practice, I run a community space called TEOT. It stands for the Intersection of Art and Technology. And as part of TEOT, we're also running a artist residency for exploring cultural uses with AI. This is in partnership with the Mozilla Foundation. It's called Creative Futures Counterstructures. And basically, we are exploring how creatives can use AI nowadays, now that it's a thing. We've had, over the past few weeks, perspectives from different okay, I was like, what's a smart word that I can say? I'm just gonna say it in a dumb way. Really smart people who've done a lot of really epic things in AI talk about like their learnings to date with AI. So Max Krasmensky is one example. He leads the storytelling lab at Midjourney, telling us about his play-centric approach and using AI as a medium. We had Joel Simon, who created GAMBreeder, which later became ArtBreeder, another like seminal technology that shaped a lot of how images were how people played with images and generating them. But yeah, just like having all these industry legends like just share their experiments with AI with our artist residency. This program is open to anyone, and if you'd like to join us for our future workshops exploring how creatives can use AI, you're very welcome to tune in. There's 3 more weeks of this program, and they happen on Thursday at the TEOT space. But yeah, I guess TEOT at large is just creating space for creative technologists to connect with each other and grow their practice. And in addition to the events that we host, we have a new media arts gallery showcasing works that use technology as a medium, some of them which are using AI as well. But yeah, I invite you to come to our space. Our website is teot.place. I'm in Powell Online. I post a lot of my art explorations online, and so this is where you can find me. But yeah, at large, in the context of AI, it is controversial. I think for me personally, what I'm scared about is like how AI affects like memory, and I think that for me is kind of like one of the scariest bits personally. But this is also exactly why I think artists should be creating things to like show people like the dangers of it or like what else can be done about it. So yeah, go forward with things that are scary, and I think something cool can come about it. But yeah, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Ash. Our final speaker is Paul Henry Smith. Paul is a conductor, technologist, and product designer whose work bridges classical music and artificial intelligence. He founded the Philharmonic Orchestra, the first digital orchestra to perform a full Beethoven symphony live in concert, and he created Cadenza, an AI-powered accompaniment app that Apple named one of the best new apps. Paul has worked at the MIT Media Lab and on product design at Amazon and Tanium. Through Symphonic Laboratory, he leads workshops and performances that bring together musicians, audiences, and AI in creative and unexpected ways. After Paul's talk, please stay seated. We'll bring all 4 speakers back up on stage for a moderated panel conversation, followed by time for your questions. Please welcome Paul Henry Smith.
Hi, everyone. So, artificial intelligence, we tend to think of it as ChatGPT. You go there, you get it to do something, summarize your email, or whatever questions you have. But I wanted to talk to you about another kind of intelligence that's not words, not linguistic, not visual. Musical intelligence. This is a thing. It's a way that human beings think. We don't just think in words. Oh, that's me. I'm a classical musician, and that is a little bit different, so I want to just talk about the model of being a classical musician because it's going to affect how you understand what I'm doing with AI. A classical musician is not a composer, right? We're not making new songs, usually. We're also not the kind of workman-like person who goes into a studio and lays down a track and gets paid and they're done. We're kind of in between. We have to look at texts, instructions that are created by composers who may no longer be with us and that are imperfect. These instructions tell you what notes to play, what rhythms, but they don't tell you how loud every note is. They don't tell you in a chord which note should be more prominent. They don't tell you how much time to take before you continue your sentence. That's something that you're trained as a musician to understand is missing from these texts. And that's part of a musical intelligence that hopefully if you're trained well and you practice a lot, you intuit and make part of your world of music making. So we like to play music, of course, that old people that are long gone. But I wanted to also tell you about how we don't really think of them as that far in the past. Brahms died in 1897. Well, there's this woman, Mrs. Ruschiska. I'm probably saying her name wrong. She had a son who became the conductor of the Greensboro Symphony Orchestra in North Carolina. And that's where I grew up. And I went to see this orchestra concert when I was 12 that he was conducting, and he had invited his mom from Vienna to come over and see him conduct because he was, I guess, proud of that. But I was 12. I didn't really know much about that kind of thinking. Ms. Ruschiska was born in 1890, died in 1989. For reference, I was born in 1964. I'm still alive. So what? Well, I'm trying to explain to you that we don't really think of these people like Brahms as that far removed. At the intermission of this concert, by the way, I went out to the lobby, and that's where I met this elegant Viennese old woman, and she came up to me, I guess because how many 12-year-olds go to an orchestra concert, I guess. And she said, "Oh, are you liking this concert?" "I love it. I never heard Brahms' Fourth Symphony before." And she said, "Oh, well, you know, I was 7 years old, and I went to a concert in Vienna, and I saw Brahms, and it was the Fourth Symphony." And as a 12-year-old, she told me about that in 1977, so I'm 61. As a 12-year-old, you think, wait, okay, so it's not like somebody from history, an old dead person, it's someone that I'm talking to now saw that person, so it made it stark to me that this is real. And that's how classical musicians think in general about the past. We think of ourselves as the bridge between this moment in this room, in this space, with these sounds, and these people are going to try to experience something that was envisioned by somebody who's probably not here right now. And that, I'm just putting this slide in to show you that that goes into the musical training as well. Often the teachers that we have are teaching us things that are not on YouTube. You might hear the phrase, "Oh, the internet contains all the world's knowledge." That is, of course, totally not true. For a music teacher at Curtis Institute teaching me how to conduct, he has no YouTube channel, he has no book. It's just him, and you talk about music, and you do things, and you learn from those people. And you find out, oh, that person actually studied with a student of Franz Liszt, or a student of Franz Liszt. As we get older, I guess it's going to be farther back. Okay, so this is important. Why? Kind of interesting because if you've heard of AI and music generation, you've probably heard it in the context of, I'm going to tell the AI what kind of song or recording I want to have and listen to right now. And that is indeed what most people do when they use AI to make music. But that's not the mindset and model that I and other classical musicians bring to it. We have a guy somewhere who tried to write something down, and as I said, it's sort of imperfect. And our job is to find a space and get together with people who know how to understand that instruction and turn it into something hopefully compelling. Bach, okay, I don't know anyone who met Bach, but so he died in what, 1750? I'm not going to even go there. What I wanted to show you, though, is that this is the Well-Tempered Clavier is a collection of 48 preludes and fugues in all the different keys. And piano students learn this the world over, and they have been doing this for 237 years. Why do they do it? Well, the reason he said that he wrote this is so that people could learn how to play music. He wasn't thinking, oh, I'll publish this and make a lot of money. The idea of music as something that you produce and there's an artifact and then it's bought and sold online or in a record store, none of these guys knew anything like that, right? There were no records. There was no radio. This is the world that classical musicians live in. So I did this in the pandemic to just see if I could create my own performance, and there's a recording that's kind of the byproduct of that process. It exists, but that's not why I did it. I did it to see if I understood my training well enough to go through all of those crazy things that he thought of for this Well-Tempered Clavier. There's fast, there's highly metronomic and rhythmic stuff, there's weird ethereal chromatic harmonies that I don't really understand. So it's very challenging as a performer to try to get inside those pieces and see how they sound. And I'm going to play you some of this in a moment. This basically summarizes what I'm thinking when I'm approaching how to play music. I just wonder if I could put the sounds in this room in a way that we have a great experience. I asked ChatGPT to estimate how many performances there were of this piece of music, given how long ago it was written. And take it or leave it, that's the number I came up with. That doesn't include people just playing it in their living rooms. But if you go online to look for this piece of music, there are over 650 recordings of it on Spotify and Apple Music, etc. Why does that matter? Well, because it's not important that there's another one, right? I'm making another one. It doesn't matter. No one's going to listen to it. I just put it there because why not? Okay, two key things before we get to hearing this that I want you to understand about what I'm trying to do as a musician. I mentioned that the Bach score or music notation doesn't include how loud every note is, right? So that's something that you have to think about because you can't make a sound as a musician that doesn't have any loudness. So that loudness is going to have some energy. It's going to be very loud or very soft, something like that. And you want to match that energy to the energy that you know is in the score. Like there's a harmonic energy, there's rhythmic energy, there's pitch energy. And that's all factually in the score, very clearly there. But what the interpretive challenge is can I align the parts of sound that I make in this room with that energy that was written down in the score? And that's usually done through loudness and timing. And then the second thing is making sure that the things that should be prominent are the things that actually sound more prominent in the room. Okay? So keep that in mind, and we'll listen to just a brief excerpt of this. Fugue number 3. It's an awesome one. I'll raise my hands up and down just to show you the energy curve. Okay, so hopefully you got the idea that the loudness of the sounds sort of had something to do with the music and wasn't just arbitrary. So what I wanted to find out was, could I use AI, but not words, not typing in, hey, give me a song that sounds like Bach and is played well. No, could I use musical thinking to get the AI to understand how I approached making music, which is what I just described to you? Well, what happened was, a couple of years ago, or maybe it was just a year ago, that became possible, that you could use audio to prompt the AI to do something and not just typing or saying words or giving it an image. So I thought, okay, I'll take my piano recording, feed that into the AI, along with the prompt that is text. And the reason I did that is I didn't want it to just spit back out the piano recording and say, yeah, Paul, I did it. I made the piano recording and it sounds just like you, because that would just be a copy. And I wanted to find out, could it understand the way I was playing it and not what I was playing? So the prompt in text was to make it sound like something completely different than a piano, but understand the way that I played it. That trombone solo is weird. Okay, so I was shocked. I don't know that much about big band. I'm a classical guy. I thought that was really cool. But what I heard in it as a musician is, what? That was how I phrased that in the piano part. So hopefully you kind of caught that it was similarly phrased and played. And that got me thinking, I'll just make a whole bunch more of these and stick them online. So if you want to hear any, just search my name and you'll find that last one is 2 hours of scherzos made by AI. Now, one more thing about this. I put piano music into the AI, but it doesn't know if it's music or not. And I'm walking around the city here and I'm hearing all kinds of really interesting sounds. And I thought, hey, let's make the San Francisco Symphony. We've heard foghorns, probably you've heard them around here. I'll just record them and stick the foghorns into the same process and describe to it in the text part, oh, let's create a symphony using the foghorns. This is just an excerpt of what I'm working on now. I want to make it scarier. That person who's swimming out there, what are they doing? They're going to get hit by a giant cargo ship. So I recorded also some Caltrain noises. Do you want to hear a little bit of that? Okay, this one will be a scherzo. I'm putting this together to be the San Francisco Symphony, not the orchestra, just that's the name of the symphony. And eventually, when it's ready, I want to bring it to the musicians, to bring it full circle back to what I was talking about. Our role is to take some sort of instructions and then put them live in a room and make sure something really great happens. This is not that process. This is going from an idea right to a recording, which a lot of people do, and that's fine, but I'm going to get to that in a moment, what I plan for this. But for now, just a brief bit of Caltrain. Okay, Caltrain. That's the old trains that were a lot more shaky. These new ones don't really sound like that. Let's play it live. That's what I want to do next. So instead of the AI producing a recording, now we're going to take the AI's output and write musical notation that the orchestra can play. So what you just heard, instead of just hearing the recording, there would be an orchestra on the stage playing this. AI can't do that, by the way. You can't give it a recording and get notation. So we just have to use our brains, and fortunately, that's one of the things we learn as musicians, how to write down the music that we hear, so no problem. This is an AI-generated concert hall. And that's my last slide, so thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite everyone else up to the stage. Quick Q&A. Paul at paulsmith.zone. Before I ask the panel a question, just a show of hands, how many of you have ever asked a computer for help and wondered if it was just messing with you? Oh, about half of you. Okay. So, Quinn, from what I understand, you trained neural nets to read your art. What's the most human thing you've seen an algorithm utterly fumble, like something that is easy for humans, that tells you something about what AI can or can't quite see?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. I didn't exactly, so you can take the top layer of a neural net off and then like kind of do some like training to focus on your data set. In the example I gave, I was using a model that was like pre-trained and then having it do something that it wasn't trained to do. And I'd say like, a lot of it was garbage, and some of whenever there's a classification algorithm, it's giving each of like the possible classifications like a % probability, and usually you pick the one with the highest, probability. So some of those were interesting, and they kind of felt like, there was something kind of like a little eerie, but like not that eerie of like, sure, this is a lumen print. It kind of looks like a jellyfish. It's not a jellyfish, and stuff. So I think there's who knows what patterns this is like actually picking up on or not, and stuff. And, I think it's like an impressive party trick. And like, I think that maybe there's like certain tasks that can work really well to be like kind of automated and stuff. I think like the real question's maybe just more at like what cost and why.
Did you ever wonder if you were just seeing things like the way people see like a face in the craters on Mars and the data may not have that in it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that totally happens. I think especially with machine hallucinations, when you like to peel back a few like layers of the neural net, which like look really interesting, but yeah, like we're probably seeing a lot of what we want to see in that.
Interesting. Audrey, you created a whole museum around AI's inability to get it. What's the best AI misunderstanding you've displayed at the museum? And did any visitor ever say, hey, maybe that's actually the point?
I guess, well, so the museum is called the Misalignment Museum, and it's referencing something called the alignment problem, which is this idea of the importance of making AI in alignment with human values. So it's kind of like a little pun on that. But I would actually say the biggest misconception about the museum is that it's like an anti-AI space. But in fact, my main goal is to be a space that's like a neutral education ground, and also to be a space that enables open discourse. I think that because it's such a charged topic, there's a lot of preconceived notions of like how it's bad or what things are bad about AI. And I think these are really important things that we want to discuss. But one thing I have noticed is a lot of the news and a lot of the like public discourse around it, there's like a lot of fear about AI and there's a lot of controversy about it, but oftentimes the controversy aren't the things that I think are the actual problems. And so what my hope is that the more we can increase literacy, the more people can be a part of this conversation. And then likewise, it's so controversial even among tech communities. And so through creating really approachable and fun, like very goofy, many of them, but like still a very serious topic, like creating these pieces with high tech integrity as well, it creates a more of a neutral space for people in tech and not tech alike to be able to talk about these otherwise, I think, very emotionally charged topics.
Oh, that's really cool. Very well put. I feel like now I misunderstood what misalignment, so thank you for that. Ash, your work is all about playful, interactive digital tools, et cetera. Have you ever built something where the AI kept misreading your human intent in such a way that it got like weirdly profound or even just weird?
Yeah, that happens a lot. I guess like it happens pretty easily whenever you chat to any like LLM interface, like but then you can shape the prompt so that it talks to you in the way you want. Yeah, things have gone awry sometimes. It happens.
And has that ever resulted in something that you decided, oh, that's actually not what I was intending, but I'm going to go that way? Go with it.
Yes. Yes, for sure. I can't think of an exact reason, but it has
It's
happened.
okay. It's a yes or no question, so that's fine.
Per.
Okay. When machines surprise us and sometimes scare us, okay, who here has ever been surprised or mildly unsettled by a recommendation from Netflix or an AI-generated song or even a refrigerator that seems to know too much about your cheese preferences? Raise your hand.
I want to hear that story.
Don't worry, you can raise your hand. The AI can't see you in here. Okay. There's no story there. That's just purely artful questioning. Audrey, okay. I'm curious about the people that visit the museum and what you see in their reactions. Have any people sort of felt when they see something, have you seen any people have like a really deep, almost like seeing something in it that maybe isn't there, but to them it's real and deeply moving?
So, we've had like the full gamut of people coming to the museum. Like it's been really delightful because it's very kid friendly, but at the same time the pieces are all made. I collaborate with a lot of AI engineers and founders of tech companies, so it's like not just like a fake show demo. It's actually built on this cutting edge tech. So it is able to both be interesting, I think, to like the 3-year-old just as a fun interactive piece, but then it's also very technically interesting to even like an AI engineer or founder. And so we've had pretty much the whole gamut of people visiting, which has been really nice. And I think the primary criteria I have for the pieces that we create and also the ones that we curate is 1, it has to teach something about AI. 2, it has to be interesting even if you didn't know the piece was powered by AI. And then 3, it has to be wholesome enough for kids. A new one I added was that it technically has to be very usable, because when we had so many people come through, it became kind of problematic if things would break. But let me think. So because we've had such a vast like demographic come through, like I think one of the powers of art is that it meets you at the level that you come into with. Like one of our really popular pieces is an AI palm reader. And so we have this cool like gypsy looking tent, and there's a crystal ball in it, and you stick your hand in this seemingly like, like fortune-telling box, but inside of that box there's a webcam that is analyzing the lines of your hand. And we have 2 AIs. So one of them is called, it's a computer vision technology, which is using, like a lot of the self-driving cars you might see around San Francisco, some of the technology that they use is computer vision, and that's how this AI is able to identify that's a red light or that's a person and to know to stop. And so you can actually train this on many things, including lines of a palm. And so we have this piece that is one doing that for the hand, and then we trained another AI on a bunch of books of palmistry. So we combine these 2, and then you get your actual fortune projected in this like creepy like fortune telling globe. And
Wait, so you're putting fortune tellers out of business?
well, next to that exhibit, I have a picket sign that says AI is taking human jobs, because it's taking palm reader jobs, right? But so this piece, it's really fun because people, of course, like to have something like their palm read. But we also wanted to have a way to really touch on the topic of job displacement. And so like a topic that's so controversial is, of course, job displacement, but I think it's more nuanced than just saying that AI is bad because it's taking jobs. So, for example, we have things like OSHA for physical work, and if there are jobs that are like physically very dangerous, right? So I guess like one example could just be like a very easy one is like coal mining, right? It's so dangerous for people, and so we shouldn't be trying to fight to keep these jobs. We should actually be fighting to automate these jobs so people who would have had these don't suffer a lot of their health, or they don't endanger themselves. But the nuance to that is we still need to figure out how to replace the livelihood. And so I think being able to have these nuanced conversations where if we were just talking about truck driving jobs or like other types of work, it would get so inflamed. But something with like palm reading, like I know it's like there's still it's like kind of like a smaller demographic that's not as charged. So we're able to then have a more nuanced conversation that doesn't get like really occluded by emotional reactions.
That's fascinating. Raise your hand if you think AI is neutral. Oh, your point got across. Go ahead.
I think it's like very I think that it can be neutral, and I think in fact to assume it's not is dangerous, because then it's absolving people of their responsibilities to go in one way or another to direct it. So I think that it's of course like a tectonic shift in the world, and I think that comes with a lot of responsibility. But I do think that as a technology, it's probably much more functional to frame it as neutral.
Any thoughts on that?
I think that like like as like Abigail Thornton put it, there's no like ethical AI under capitalism. So like I think that there would be like ways to investigate an AI as a technology that if we're really like the center goal was like the betterment of humanity, there would be like things, I mean, like maybe like language translation would be like really helpful to have at scale. Or, you know, like there's certain use cases that like totally do actually like make a lot of sense. I think the problem is when, like how much data we're storing, how much like this is invading people's privacy, how many like, you know, wars are being like fought with this. And then like in that context, it can't really any longer be like neutral. And it's also like, you know, it's not being created by like some like public institution that has the public good at the heart of it. It's a corporation. So it is kind of embedded in the systems that it's created in.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're describing. I feel like can be applied to almost any technology out there too. We have very little control in our world of what happens to power.
I would also, like, I reject the premise that the capitalism frame is bad. In fact, I think that, and I think that's like a separate topic, but for example, the ability for, I think there's just been such amazing things that's been happening with AI. So for example, even in like radiology, like health technology, there are AI tools that are able to diagnose people much earlier and much better and much more efficiently than if we were doing this entirely with just like brute force human eyes that are trained on it. AI's been making such huge advancements in biotech, and so like I'm really like I have friends who have like certain health issues, and like I'm just like so hopeful that within the next 5 to 10 years we're going to have the technology to in fact reverse a lot of this. And so I think a lot of things like this are only possible when we have a system that incentivizes this type of discovery and progress. I think another really like big use case for this, and we've seen studies, there's like a new school or like tutoring programs that like are using AI to really help children learn, and because it can respond to the child, they're literally able to accomplish like what would have been taught in like, you know, an 8-hour day or something in like less than 2 hours a day, and these kids are performing way better, way above their like typical class level. And these are things that are so enabled by a technology like this. And I think that like the incentive structures that motivate both wanting better medical outcomes, wanting better education outcomes are really fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people can be motivated by other things than wanting to make like a lot of money, and especially with like medical use cases, like the cost of a like false negative or false positive are a lot higher when it's like a human life on the line. So like, you know, like 99% accuracy rate might really work in like some circumstances and be very impressive, but like there's still humans that are going to be misdiagnosed, and especially in medical science, there is a long history of like medical slides being, you know, and diseases being documented on white bodies, so that, you know, like white people are going to be like, you know, or people with lighter skin are going to be the people who that works for. And like, I mean, what, like 5 years ago was like when Google said that black people were gorillas?
I would say, in fact, that AI, like there's one company right now that, so in fact, a lot of the health problems that we have right now, there are actually medical solutions to them, but many things are getting caught up in like FDA approval testing. And it's very hard to find for like a lot of the drugs that we have, they're the ones that they were able to study like a mass population of people that you could get enough data to really get through the FDA approval process. But with something like maybe diseases or illnesses that are affecting smaller minorities of people, having something like AI that can really help zero in and then also like identify the people to be a part of the testing, it's like something that is, I think, extremely hard to do without a technology like AI. And I think in that case, it's like, now we have an ability to like help. I think the other, well, I guess actually the framing is like, I think a lot of us are trying to frame the world in comparison to like a non-existent platonic ideal versus like comparing us to like the default state of like absolute, like nature is so brutal. Like if you watch any National Geographic thing, it's like the ability to have technology and civilization that like enables so much like medical advancement, so much like food and care and shelter is like, I think something that a lot of this technology is going to able to help us get even like further in. But again, it's like the comparison is not like this utopian ideal that doesn't exist. It's like the comparison is like, okay, let's look at 50 years in the past and like maybe even just like 1 year ago in the past. And so that's a lot of how I frame and motivate the work I do. With like, of course, it's always like knee-jerk reaction to be scared of new things, but yeah, so that's kind of.
Well, that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea that the state of nature is like somehow a brutal force goes back to like Thomas Hobbes, and that is ultimately like an ideological perspective, that like kind of goes back to what you think, whatever human nature is or not, or, what even kind of exists. And I've had friends who've done like medical research at, famous universities and stuff, and there's still like a lot of red tape over like you can't really train an AI with like 23 samples, like if you're doing like, and I think there is a lot of potential and there still is a lot of context. And like if things are based around like proprietariness or, someone like protecting intellectual property on like stolen land, there's just like is, more to it and you can't really call it neutral.
Okay, let's move on. One more question. Ash, you're a community builder. You turn city spaces and the internet into art workshops. That's amazing. If you could change the way digital tools collect, remix, or share stories or make art, what would you do to put more creative power into everyone's hands and not just tech bros in tight shirts?
Beautiful question. AI is so nuanced. That's the beauty of it. That's why we need more perspectives taking it on. What power would I give to more creatives? I think there's a saying right now that distribution is like a moat for startups, which I think is true when it comes to creatives as well.
You're saying distribution is a moat? What does that mean?
Okay, moat is one of those words that I read on Twitter that I assume the meaning to be like an advantage of some sort. And
I see. So
for your
if you have a
company.
moat, somebody can't get across it and kill you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like your advantage. I think a lot of artists struggle with like getting their message out there in an effective way. And I do think social media is an important and powerful tool for people to utilize. So I would give everyone the power of communicating their stories really effectively on social media.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.